Welcome to Honest HR. I'm Marjorie Morrison, SHRM's Executive in Residence for Mental Health, and also your special guest host for this episode. For the past decade, military spouse unemployment has hovered around 21%, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. That's a staggering figure compared to the overall U.S. annual unemployment rates, which typically fall below 5%. Yet at the same time, 76% of HR professionals say they've struggled to fill open roles in the past year, which is according to SHRM's report on leveraging the potential of military spouse talent. So today, we're exploring the unique strengths and career challenges of military spouses and how HR can best support them. Joining us is Brittany Fallon. She's a military spouse, and she's also the lead of financial strategy and accounting operations here at SHRM. Brittany, welcome to Honest HR.
Thank you.
Now, I know in your day job, it's not usually being interviewed on a podcast. So I just want to thank you in advance for taking the time to do this, because I know that it sounds like you have a very different role at SHRM, and somehow someone pulled you in and said, you know what, let's talk about what it's like to be an employed military spouse. I personally have spent many, many, many years of my career working with the military. And one thing I have learned is that there's no military member that's had the same experience. And so I'm assuming there's no military spouse that's had the same experience. So I definitely appreciate that you're sharing with us at sort of generalizing it for all military spouses. So we're just going to get started here. So military spouses often face frequent relocations. So we know that. And that can be very challenging to build a stable career, right? If you're supporting your spouse, their job is to get moved and to relocate. And what is it called if they don't? Homesteading? Is that the term they give it?
I think that's what they call it.
I never had it. Can you share some specific barriers that you've encountered when you're seeking long-term employment? And then how that's helped or hurt or impacted your professional development?
Yeah. I think with the frequent relocations, like everyone else, it's, led to moving jobs on probably a consistent basis. Every 3 to 5 years. I think the longest place we've been is about 5 years. But I think the biggest obstacle or the biggest challenge I've found in my career is that you're never at a job long enough for career progression. So I've had a breadth of experience, but I would say progression for me specifically has probably been the biggest challenge.
How long have you been married?
16 years.
Wow. So where have you moved in those 16 years?
We just bought a new home and we were going through all the moves. This is our 12th home together.
Wow.
In 16 years. And we've 3 cross-country moves.
Whoa.
Some deployments in there. I think we've been in California, Maryland, Virginia. He's been overseas for a few years without me. So it's been a long time.
Wow. And making friends, I would imagine, is also hard. Is it now with technology easier to keep in touch with people?
Well, I think, networks and social media has made it easier to keep in touch. And building networks has probably been easier since.
So there's these unemployment gaps or employment gaps. So I'm assuming you have to move. You only stay in one place for so long. Then you've got to go find the job at the new place. So there are these gaps that exist, I'm assuming, on more resumes than not. What could HR professionals do to kind of help, in a way, view you as a more holistic candidate?
I think, honestly, it's very basic. It's, it could be a deployment. It could be a PCS move or an overseas tour. I think, relocations and gaps of employment are just inevitable. I think understanding the why behind those gaps is really the base and foundation of how you can, just support, your talent pool and understand their, challenges. I think if you don't understand the why there's employment gaps and you're just kind of looking at them like everything else, you can miss an opportunity.
I mean, there's a flip side to this, right? Where you've had to be very adaptable, right? You've gotten probably, what did you say, 12 moves?
Yeah.
Pretty good at moving, and also probably being able to release things and say, okay, I'm not taking that. I'm not going. And I would think those are really good qualities in a job, right? Like you have to think on your feet. You can't get too stuck in one thing. Those are, to me, I would think are very transferable skills.
I would say like it's taught me to be adaptable. It's taught me to be flexible, have critical thinking skills. I think one of the things that has probably been the most unique experience for me is, I got my master's in HR and compensation and benefits, and I've moved into financial operations. And so I think taking roads and risks in my career just to meet the needs of, my lifestyle has been, it's been scary, but it's also been very rewarding, specifically for me.
Did you ever see that this was going to be your life at the beginning? Like, was there I know you mentioned earlier before we got started that you got married young.
I did.
So you got pulled onto a journey.
I never envisioned it, but I think I've taken it in stride. It's become, an experience that I've enjoyed. I've been fearful. I've had, ups and downs along the road, but I also really appreciate the fact that I've gotten to experience everything I have.
Oh, I love that. So it's like you're coming at this as it's been a strength and it's given your life a sense of adventure. Is there, what could you do from your own perspective, or what could HR professionals do to also see that as a positive?
I mean, I think just from understanding the experience, I've had, I've worked in 7 different industries, from engineering to government contracting. I've worked at a credit union. I've worked at, a consulting company for person-centered organizational work. So I think just the depth and the breadth of experience that I have has really helped shape my abilities and the experience and expertise I have.
That's so good. I mean, so are there parts of the military that affect your day-to-day life as well?
I would say deployments, temporary assignments of duty where my spouse is gone for, unknown number of days, which has happened. It changes your routines. Mm-hmm. And I think just being able to operate independently as a military spouse, I think it's also it shows in my professional life. I'm very, I like to work independently. I like to make sure I finish things to completion. I think it's pushed me into different zones of my comfort.
Yeah, I bet, because most people, do you feel can't relate? Are you aware of other military spouses, let's just say here at SHRM, in all the different jobs you've had? Is it sort of that expression, birds of a feather flock together? Do you find each other?
We do. There's a few military spouses here at SHRM, and we know each other. One of them I play kickball with. I think the community is very strong. I think we understand the challenges, so we support each other. We know hey, if your husband's deployed and your kids are having let's have one of us go pick them up, and you're working late. I think the community really is supportive of each other, which also helps.
So I learned about you that your husband's in the Marines, mm-hmm. and I shared with you, I spent many years working with the Marines. And so I always say my work with the military was an N of 1, because I only worked with the Marines and I only worked with males, because I did my work at MCRD and then Camp Pendleton, which was infantry, and it was all males. And so I never had the chance to work outside of that. And I'm also just curious, is there a difference? Is there a difference if someone's an Army spouse or an Air Force spouse? Or
I think the lifestyles, there's unique experiences that are had. I think tours could be different in time frame. I know depending on enlisted or officers, your tour of duties could be 2 years to 3 years. From branch to branch, I think they're similar, but I also think that, their resources are a little different, just based on, military spending and budgets and what opportunities and resources are out there.
So when I think about HR, right, mm-hmm. to bring it back to HR professionals. So now let's just say they've hired you. They've looked past the resume. They realize the strengths that people have, the unique strengths that are adaptable. And I was just in a conversation this morning about how do we take people who just can't adapt. This is a true story. They can't because somebody said 75% of my team does not adapt to change. And we've got about 25% that are nimble and, are able to kind of iterate, and 75% who really don't like change. Can you help do some change management work? And so that's like fresh on my mind as I'm trying to put together, how would I do that? I know you have these great strengths that you bring to it with that adaptable, but what could HR professionals do once you're in the job to help sort of elevate that, bring that out, and then support you during times that, unpredictability of what, like you said, deployment or temporary assignments and things like that.
I think one of the strengths, and I'm making a blanket assumption here for military spouses in general, is the strength of being, I think it's called a change agent, right? So I think because we're so used to it, we understand, one, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. How do you just accept it and, be optimistic and push through it? But I also think understanding that, you need to go out and focus on the why of the change. And they can be your change agents, where they're going out there and educating people on the importance of change, or the, why we need to do this. And I think because we're so experienced with it, we're good at that. We have a natural inclination for it.
I love that. Did they teach it to you, or did you just learn it?
I've worked, with my breadth of experience, I've worked for different, companies who've taught certain aspects of change management. And that was one of the things that really stuck with me.
Did you have any training when you became a military spouse of like, this is what life is going to be?
No, I think there are courses. I think, it was 16 years ago and I first jumped in, and I don't think I took advantage of many of the resources when I first.
We often talk about networking and how important networking is for everybody. Johnny C. Taylor Jr., the CEO of SHRM, calls this a relationship economy, which I just love that term. And I quote him on it all the time because I think it's so great. Have there been things that in your different jobs that companies have done to help you network? Because it's also professionally, but also personally, right? You get into a new community, make new friends, like that have really kind of helped you kind of get acclimated.
There were one company, I think it was prior to the pandemic, so where remote work wasn't as, common as it is, that knew I was a military spouse and tailored a job so that no matter where I moved, so for 5 years, I was able to stay with one company. I took the job with me. And so they worked with me, and it was very earlier in my career. So I was very grateful and thankful that I had that opportunity. And they were able to take lessons from that as well, though, I think, and they've tailored their future job offerings to be able to accommodate that.
So if you could write any kind of program policy, and I know like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Hiring Our Heroes program has a really big military spouse employment kind of program. Like what advice would you give to a company? I mean, you've definitely had a lot of experience.
It's maybe my opinion, but I think really focusing job descriptions and like location of jobs on the skills needed to get the job done, rather than, traditional career paths or traditional, task orientation of job descriptions. I think if you build it around the strengths, I think you can get more out of that person.
So I think what I hear you saying is that it's not necessarily just the job description. It's the actual traits that you might have. Like you might be analytical, and somebody who's analytical and can be adaptable, those traits can fit into many different roles. So it's like being more holistic when they're thinking about looking at the person.
Yeah, I think, my current boss saw that I had a skill set where I could analyze data, I could process, documentation, quickly and figure out and provide information to give them backing to make decisions. I think she found that very valuable, and she's kind of really made a role that really highlights all my strengths.
I love that. And something that people managers and HR professionals can do, right? They can think outside of the box. They could think of people as talent, and then how does that talent fit into roles?
And how do you meet the needs of your organization?
Yeah, I love that. So Brittany, I'm going to reread that stat that was in the intro because it was kind of profound to me. Despite understanding the unique challenges of military spouses, 60% of HR professionals told SHRM they found it more difficult to retain them than non-military affiliated employees. Does that shock you?
No.
Wow. So why is that, and what can HR professionals do?
I think kind of going back to the unique situation I had where a company let me kind of move cross country and take my job with me. I think prior to COVID, that was a lot harder to find. And so I think, and even with like deployments, military spouses will tend to try to take a step back professionally to be able to care for their family, the kids. I know there's a lot of life things that go on that it's really hard to make a structured schedule on a full-time basis with a family at home and your husband gone.
Yeah.
I think it's just, there's been a lot of obstacles for military spouses, and just knowing and understanding that doesn't make them, less loyal or committed or,
Yeah. I mean, I really think that there's such this kind of role that an HR professional can play to really help with empathy and some compassion. And I so many times I just think if a goal is to get the job done, that maybe sometimes there's flexibility as far as like you're getting your job done and you're performing it, above the mark, that maybe there can be some compassion towards schedules or things like that.
I think it's all based on what that position is aimed to accomplish, right? I think with my job, at the end of the day, I know that they want, information to make decisions, or they need certain tasks processed. And so there's the task completion, takes a certain amount of time. But when you're processing it, I've processed it, late at night, and I've made different accommodations in my life to attend, whether it's a promotion or a retirement ceremony as a military spouse. So I've really appreciated that SHRM's given me the flexibility to be able to be present for my husband's career. And I think having an employer that understands and provides the empathy to be able to, allow their employees and understand that that's their life now.
So is it a cultural decision that a company makes, an organization makes?
I truly probably would say that, yeah. I think generally if you are understanding, your managers are understanding, your teams are understanding, and I think it's just a common, practice. I think the more you preach the commonality of it, the more it's just an everyday occurrence.
Have you worked somewhere where you did not feel that the culture was right?
That's a great question. I think there have been different industries that struggle and have a harder time allowing for those because the maybe strict deadlines. Like the engineering firm was a great place. I think culturally it was great. I also think they had deadlines for different designs and things like that. So it was a little harder to be given flexibility in things.
But we oftentimes learn from things that are done right and from things that haven't been right. And it sounds like SHRM has been a really, really good fit for you. What could and now you're in a situation right here to be able to share with HR professionals, what can they do, or what advice would you have for them what not to do?
I think just maybe educating managers on the value military spouses can bring. I think having flexible policies and understanding that we're not just military spouses, we're humans too. We have the same problems as everyone else for the most part. We just have additional or different ones. I think just employers having compassion and empathy and inclusion. I think, not making someone feel like it's, a burden or that they're doing something wrong by, having life.
Yeah. Inclusive is, like you mentioned, inclusivity, and that's an important piece of this. Is it helpful for an employer to, create an ERG or a connecting? It goes back kind of to the networking question, or I don't know, is there anything that employers can do to help sort of the rest of the company know and understand the situation that military spouses are in?
I think from my experience, just being able to have a team and a community. I think with the frequent moves, we're starting from scratch, when we move and we go to a new location for the most part. So our work families, become our community. And I think however you aim to do that, as long as you can provide that community, it's very important. Like, I've always thought about the people I work with as my own little support system. And, some people like to have work life and home life, but the lines are a little blurred for me.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense. And on that thread, are there military spouses that you've stayed in touch with outside of work and commiserate with? And have you learned anything about like the employment from them?
Oh, I have. I'm very heavily involved in, some of our military spouse programs like kickball and things like that. And
so is that a military spouse kickball league?
It is.
How fun.
So, and people move all the time. So you end up staying friends with people who are in North Carolina or Japan and their careers. You get to watch how they've taken courses in their careers. And we all have different, journeys.
Yeah, I think that's so great. Did someone start the kickball?
Yeah, there's a few that run the league here specifically in this area.
Wow, I love that. And somehow you found out about it?
Yeah, I found out about the league in general in California because it's a nationwide league.
But it's only for military spouses?
It is.
Wow. What other kind of programs are there out there? Because maybe one of the other things that HR professionals can do is help, be able to help military spouses get connected to some of these programs. Are there other ones?
There's definitely a few. That's the one that I've committed to because having a full-time job, it's one that's my outlet. I know others have mom groups or they have like running groups and things like that. It's a little hard for me to commit to those because I do work full-time.
Is kickball like once a week?
There's a spring and fall, and then there's different tournaments in the summer and winter time, but it's every Sunday.
Oh, that's perfect. So it's on a Sunday and then you go out after?
It's an all day event. So you're pretty you're pretty tired after.
But it sounds like that is really an investment in community, in friendship, in networking. I find that so interesting. So it's like you have 2 free days a week, right? And one of them you're investing in with military spouses.
And we do like charity work and volunteer work. Part of both the association is we have to give back as a league. And so we'll do, donations for food banks or the SPCA, or we'll do, donations and doing charitable, gathering charitable funds for different, nonprofits. So it's fulfilling.
And those are your people.
Yeah, one of the girls I played kickball with, I ended up referring her to a job here at Sherman. Now she works here. So.
Oh, I love that. That is such a beautiful way of really kind of sticking together and being supportive for each other. And
I think that's the importance of networks.
Yeah. And I'm sure when they have to move or someone's moving that, it's a goodbye party, but right? Is it?
It's always bad.
So 4 out of 5 HR pros agree that their organizations want to hire military spouses, but 3 out of 4 organizations haven't implemented any tailored strategies to do so. So looking ahead, what would you hope to see from organizations and HR professionals in terms of building career pathways and opportunities for military spouses?
I think there are so many military spouse, employment programs like Hiring Our Heroes and things like that do provide valuable resources to military spouses who may not have, insights or knowledge of how to really explore that professional development on their own. And I think just working with the different associations that are out there, understanding that when you get resumes, it could be a military spouse and maybe having a little more flexibility in your talent pool analysis when you're reviewing. Removing some biases, teaching managers the value of different, talent pools.
So what happens when someone's active duty, right? And then they retire or they leave the military, they become veterans, right? And now veteran employment's like a whole nother kind of situation, right? But in some ways quasi similar in that it is somebody who's at an untraditional resume, untraditional kind of work experience. It needs to be translated a little bit into kind of what jobs would want. And I'm curious because you've been in 16 years. Wait, how many years has Your husband?
I've been married to him for 16 years. My husband's been in about 19.
Yeah, so 19. Okay, so retirement's coming. Yeah?
I can hope so.
20 is about 20 is...
I think he'll probably track to 24. It's looking.
Wow.
But
wow. So at some point, do you feel as though you're looking forward to that? Or do you think there's going to be a piece of this that you're going to miss?
I think there's a piece of the community that I'll miss. Like as much as I probably haven't looked forward to the challenges that military life has brought, there's been a lot of positives. There's the community. I've gotten my kickball. I've met wonderful people, both active and spouses. We've had experiences. We've lived in really cool places. I would miss it a lot.
And that is going to do it for this week's episode of Honest HR. A big thank you to Brittany for sharing her deep insights with us. Honest HR is part of SHRM's HR Daily flagship content series. Head to shrm.org/HR Daily to learn more and sign up for our newsletter. You can also catch us on SHRM's social media. Like, comment, and be part of the conversation. Thanks for joining. See you next time. SHRM.
This podcast is approved for 0.5 professional development credits, aka PDCs, towards SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. Enter the following PDC activity ID in your SHRM activity portal to log your credit: 264Q9NZ. That's 264Q9NZ. This ID expires on June 1st, 2026.